Daf Kuf Gimel, welcome. This is in Hisafis of Torah Ohr. Now, we were speaking yesterday about how the pari is represented by the back of the neck, which is the path of connection between mind and heart. And the three ministers of pari, the butler, the baker, and the Sarat Abachim, which here he translates as executioner, are the links up, down, and then both ways between head and heart. And we want, our goal is to block off the pari and his ministers, and instead have the proper linkage between mind and heart. And this is through the double-sided sword, which is the Cherv B'Fies. And Yosef was given this bracha by Yaakov to have Shechem Echad, an extra portion, which is that Shechem also comes from the word shoulder, which is connected to the back of the neck, which is the external of the connection between mind and heart. Anyway, we're continuing the Maimon now from Daled, the bottom of Kuf Beis Amud Daled, the bottom of Kuf Beis. So it says about Yosef that Yosef was brought down to Egypt, unlike, like we said yesterday, the Shvatim, who it says Shesham Ola Shvatim, talks about the Shvatim, Yosef's brothers, the other tribes elevating. So Yosef is represents a high spiritual level from beyond worlds, and he is brought down into Mitzrayim, which is the neck, where the depth in the mind is limited and narrowed down before going to the body. And his job is to refine the neck and to stop the pari being able to gain energy from the mind. Now, with his three ministers, and Yosef was sold as a slave to the executioner. Yosef comes from, as we said, a very high source in Atzilus, and therefore he was able to refine the back of the neck, which is blocking the transmission of the Kedusha, of holiness, and that's why he was given this blessing of the Shechem Echad, which Shechem represents also the back of the neck, like the shoulders is the chitzonis external of the neck. And Yosef's work and refinement was the source of then the Shvatim refining as well, because Yosef was from Atzilus, whereas the Shvatim are from Biyah, from the low worlds, and therefore Yaakov blesses him that he had Shechem Echad al Achecha, above his brothers, because he is from a high spiritual level from Atzilus. And Yaakov says that I already took this Becharbi Ovakashki, with my sword and with my bow, or as Onkelos translates it, with my prayer and with my request. So the double-bladed sword is, like we said, the cuts off the two prongs of arrogance and descending into pleasure seeking. And this is through Remes called the Grenum, through praising Hashem in prayer. Now Yaakov is the Gufa, is the body, because Yaakov is Tiferes, which is compared to the body, like we say in Pasach Aliyah, and Yosef is connected to the bris, and therefore they're connected. They're both the center, within the spheres. Tiferes and Yesod. Tiferes is Yaakov, and Yesod is Yosef, and they're connected. And they're like one, and therefore Yaakov, through his prayer, he gave the strength to Yosef to achieve this blocking off of energy for pari. So that's the sword. But then it also talks about the bow, the kashti, which, or according to Onkelos, the pleading, the supplication in prayer. So the difference is that the sword represents Shema, whereas the bow represents Shemoneh Esrei. The sword is Shema, which is similar to a sword, is a Romach, is a spear, which is Romach is the numerical value, the gematria of 248, like the 248 words that we say in Shema, right? We say the last three words, then the end of Shema second time. The Chazan says it, or if we daven privately, also extra 3 words. So that's the sword is the 248 words of Shema, and that is using out our speech with passion for Hashem that transforms the Amori, which is speech of Klippa. And about this, the pasuk says, we say in Yehichvei that Rabbis machashavos belev ish v'atzas Hashem yisakom, that there are many thoughts in the heart of man, but the plan of Hashem, that's what's going to stand. And then we continue Ki hu Vayehi, that Hashem spoke and the world came into existence. So the question is, how does the fact that Hashem spoke the world into existence relate to the fact that there are lots of thoughts, but Hashem's plan is what's going to happen? So the explanation is that Rabbi's machshavos, it sounds like the main problem is that it's rabbis, that there's a lot of thoughts, and this is the idea of klippa, which Hashem is one, and like it says that that Hashem could have created the world with one sentence or with one thought. Whereas Klippa is always Rabbi's machshava, is always a multiplicity of thoughts, because in order to have an independent, something outside of, that appears to be outside of Hashem, it's through multiplicity, which comes from different tzirufim, different combinations of letters. And before these letters, these different combinations of letters, which each letter represents a certain energy, before it came down, there was only one original thought. When a person has a thought, so he surrounds the whatever he's thinking about inside his mind. But then when he thinks about all the details, then there becomes multiplicity. And that eventually allows for the possibility of klippa, of something covering over Hashem. But when Hashem speaks, and that puts it into existence, that represents how Hashem is the source of everything, and everything is one. And that is what destroys the scheming of nations, like it says, because only Atzas Hashem Yisakom, only Hashem's plan will stand, which is the eternal oneness, which Am Yisrael, which the Yidden connect to, whereas the external multiplicity, which the other nations connect to, that is not the real thing, and that doesn't last. Now, in Shema, we talk about how Hashem is one, and with our Divrei Torah, with our study of Torah, so we affirm this oneness of Hashem, that everything is a result of Hashem and Hashem's word, and that nullifies their Meiri, which is speaking with passion about worldly affairs. That is the sort of Shema which is effective against their Meiri. But then there's even deeper and hidden klippas. There's hidden evil, which doesn't come out in actual speech. And because it's subtle and it's hidden, so then the sword doesn't help for that. Because the sword only helps for what is close. But if it doesn't help for a faraway enemy, to attack a faraway enemy, what's needed is a bow and arrow, because there, with a bow and arrow, you can shoot far away. And that is the bekashti, which means both a bow and a bow, and also means bakasha, request, because davening is about oneness with Hashem. But bakasha, when you're asking a request, that's even higher, because even if you might be thinking about Hashem's oneness, it's very nice and high thoughts. But when you actually have something you're requesting, then you feel a deeper and a more real just humility and lowness than when you're just meditating on Hashem's oneness. Someone told me that his difficulty, Baruch Hashem, is married now with many children and all that. It's a long time ago, but his difficulty with shidduchim helped him with his midas and bittul more than learning a lot of Hasidus, because it's that practical knock, that rejection, which no one should have, but it had that positive impact on him in terms of a deeper bittul than meditation of Shema. So that's the idea of Shema Nesrei. We're asking for something because we need something, and that comes from humility and total and lowness, and that's in order to awaken Hashem's Rahmanus, Hashem's mercy on us. And the degree to which the Rachmim, the Hashem's mercy, is aroused is according to the degree of our humility in the request. And that's like pulling back the bow, that the more humble it is, the further back it goes, the further forward the arrow is shot. And that can destroy even the hidden enemies, which are this deeper darkness, which are not immediately evident. Okay, so that concludes this mimer. And now second mimer, which will explain further this first mimer. Lahavin Sherish Kodvar. So to understand this in a deeper way, let's first understand the difference between Yosef and his brothers. So the Arizal writes, or in his writings, it's obvious from his students, it says that the Shvatim, they also originally come from Atzilus, from the highest spiritual world, but they're Atzilus as it shines in Bria, which is the next world down, a lower world. And they're called Merkavat Hata, the lower chariot. The idea of a chariot is that it has total bittul, it just follows the instruction. Wherever it's pulled, that's where it goes. But they're the lower chariot because they're as this bittul, but as it comes down into Bria. And this relates, the Shvatim relate to the Yud Beis Bakar, the 12 cattle, that there were these cattle that Shlomo sculptured for the Beis Hamikdash, and there were 3 on each side, and then facing each side, and then in the middle over all their backs there was this pool that was made, and this of water, and so the 12 cattle, they represent bringing down from the sea above them, the pool above them, which represents Malchus of Atzilus, and bring that down into the lower worlds of Bria, Tirasiya. And that's also the 4 flags that the Israelites, the Bnei Israel, traveled in the desert under 4 flags, which are the 4 directions, north, south, east, west, and that also represents bringing down Malchus into Bia. But Yosef is from Atzilus itself. Like we said earlier, that Yosef is Yesod, that is, which is above Malchus. And therefore, he says, Hasachas Elokim, am I instead of Hashem? But a deeper interpretation, perhaps, am I under Elokim? In other words, Elokim is Hashem's energy as it comes down into Bia, whereas Yosef stays in Atzilus, so he's not under Elokim. So the question is, if Yosef is so great, why didn't the brothers recognize his greatness? Why did they think that he's on a lower spiritual level than them, and that they should punish him for his behavior? The explanation is because there's a difference between the Shvatim and Yosef. That the word shevet comes from the word being extended outward, being drawn outward. Hamshacha, like Keichva, the Shavit, is a shooting star, which is the star is extended forward. And this is the idea of Hamshacha being brought down, or like also a branch in a tree. So there's the trunk, which is the main part of the tree, and then there's branches that extend outward from the trunk. and that's also called shevet, a branch of a tree, and similarly with the Shvatim, so they start off in Atzilus, but which Atzilus would be called the tree itself. But then they're the shevet, the branches that come off the main part, the trunk, which is Atzilus, and descend down into Bria. And like we said before, that they're the Merkava Tata, the lower chariot, and they bring down from Malchus of Atzilus into the lower world, into Bria. And this is also the concept of Shiluv Adonai B'Havaya, that to include the name Adonai with Havaya. In some Sidurim, they have this idea that when it says Hashem's name, it mixes together two names of Hashem. Either you'll have Yud Kei Vav Kei and Adonai together, so you might have Yud from Yud Kei Vav Kei, then Aleph from Adonai, then Hey, then Daled, then Vav, then Nun, and then the final Hey, and then the Yud. So mixing together Havai and Adonai, or vice versa, starting off with Adonai, first Aleph, then the Yud instead. So the Shvatim, they have this Adonai being inserted into Havaya, which is because there's the light ray from Atzilus in the tip of Bria. And the Shvatim are going upward to connect back to their source, which is the trunk, which is Atzilus. Whereas Yosef is going the other way. So Yosef, who comes from a high spiritual source, so he then descends down. The Shvatim, which have already extended down, they want to go back up, connect to their source. Whereas Yosef, who stays within his source, he stays within Atzilus. Therefore, his job is to go down. Because Yosef, like we said, is Yesod, which is part of Atzilus itself, unlike Malchus that extends down below Atzilus. And therefore he extends down. And because of this, the brothers didn't recognize him because they are in a state of elevation into Atzilus, whereas Yosef is in a state of descent into the low worlds, into Biyah, and therefore they didn't realize his greatness. Base. So now this difference between Yosef and the Shvatim, it's true at all levels. There's within the spelling of Havaya, you could spell it out like the Yud is spelled Yud Vav Dalet, and then the Hey can either be spelled Hey or Hey Aleph or other spellings. So it works out the numerical value. If you spell it with Hey Aleph is Ma, whereas if you spell it Hey, it works out as Ban. So either the numerical value of 45 or 52. 45 represents the refinement from above, whereas Ban represents the Hashem's light within worlds. Now, the original source is in what's called Ak. Ak stands for Adam Kadmon, the supernal man, and which is a high level of godliness, where everything is included together, all future creation. And so in the bottom of Ak is called Malchus of Ak, and that's where that's the source of Olam HaTehu, the world of chaos, which is a high spiritual level, but where there was a breakage and a shattering with the seven kings, which represent the seven spheres within Tehu, that each one only allowed for itself, and the light was too powerful for the vessels, like we've explained elsewhere. And that is called Malchus, or kings, like we see in the Torah and the end of Vayishlach, that it says about each of the that he ruled, and then he passed away. But Yimlech Belas, each one was a king. So it's because Torah comes from Malchus within Ak. And then after the seven the 7 kings that they all shatter, they all die. Then you have the 8th king, Hadar, and it doesn't say about him that he died, and that's because he comes from beyond the breakage of Torah Ohr. He comes from Yesod Avak, which is the original source of Yosef, and his name was Hadar, which means beautiful, because he's beyond the destruction, beyond the shattering, and therefore Hadar is where the refinement of Torah Ohr can come. And that is Shema. Now Yosef is this level of Hadar, and it says about Yosef that he was Yifei Tzayad, that he was handsome, he was beautiful. So that's like Hadar, which means beautiful. Whereas the Shvatim, they're from the lights of the Torah Ohr that shattered, and therefore they are the godliness within worlds, which is what's called Ban. So to explain this further, so we first need a preface that in Ohr Ein Sof, in Hashem's unlimited light itself, there's no name. You can't describe it in any way. It's unlimited and simple. You can't say even that Hashem is wise or Hashem is kind at that level, because Hashem's beyond any description. And the having a rotzen, having a desire or wisdom, so when a person has a desire for something, or he has a certain perspective, a certain understanding, so that becomes part of the person, and then therefore the person is not like just this simple oneness, and therefore we can't say that at the level of Ohr Ein Sof, Hashem's unlimited light, that he has anything other than simple oneness. And we can't even compare it to a flame which is within a coal, because, in other words, even if you don't see a flame, but inside the coal, if you stir the coal, then a flame will come out. But that's because so we can't say similarly with Ohr Ein Sof that it's simple, but when you stir it, from it will come all the different spheres, because with the coal, the heat and the fire is already inside. It's already clearly there. It exists. It just needs to be brought into a revelation. Whereas with Ohr Ein Sof, with Hashem's unlimited light, you won't find a rotz, and you won't find desire even concealed, because it's complete, simple oneness. And that's the meaning of Ans Chakim. We say in Pasach Aliyah, Ans Chakim Leib that you are wise, but not with the known wisdom. And similarly, we say that Hashem is understanding, but the Leib not with the known understanding. So if it would be there, but in a concealed state, then we would say it's known. But we were saying that it's not known, because it's not there even in a concealed state in Hashem's essence. Over the page. But now it seems that there seems to be a contradiction to this from Pardes, this Kabbalah Sefer, which talks about the Esser spheres Hagnuza is the 10 spheres as they are concealed within Hashem himself. So the Alter Rebbe explains that doesn't mean that you'll find spheres in Hashem himself. What it means is that through calling these names, calling Hashem these different spheres, that itself reveals those spheres in Hashem, that sort of creates those spheres within Hashem. In other words, it's not that Hashem is a Chacham, it's that when we call Hashem a Chacham, that makes Hashem a Chacham. Like Zaya says that all the different lights that within Hashem's essence, they're just the secret of his name. And it says similarly in Eitz Chaim that all the spheres, any specific quality we can talk about, it only comes from Hashem's names and the different spellings of Yud Kei Vav Kei. So now, even with a person, when you describe a person as wise, calling him wise, that itself reveals his wisdom. It's suddenly they become smarter. And yes, there's a difference that with people, they have chachma hidden within, and it just needs to be revealed. Whereas with Hashem, it's not even hidden within, but still, when we call it out, that creates this chachma. But even with the person, he might not have known. You know, there's lots of stories with students who thought they were dumb and never understand, and the teacher says that they're clever, and then they suddenly understand. So the same thing with Hashem. That calling Hashem Chacham or calling Hashem kind, that itself reveals this new quality. And the same thing with any sphere and any existence. They're all names of Hashem, that within Hashem there's just simplicity. And then when you call it out, then it creates these different names. And although we say that they're genuzos, that they're hidden, it's not that that they're already there for themselves, like with a person. We just mean that through calling it out, then it's created. And so Adam Kadmon is in itself, it's beyond any distinctions and any specifics. But at the end of Ak, Malchus of Ak is where calling Hashem different names begins, and that creates different qualities. And that is all Hashem's name, not Hashem's essence. And that is Shem Ban within Ak. Ban is always what descends down, what is sort of involved in the lower, involved in the separate. And that's where the Shvatim come from. But Hadar, which is the eighth king, and he's the one who doesn't die, so that represents Yesod, which is beyond the names, and is just pure godliness. And therefore it doesn't shatter, because it's not extending outward of pure one Hashem, and therefore it doesn't shatter. Therefore Yesod, which is the Yesod of Ak, which is Shema, is what refines Ban and brings it back to its source in pure godliness. Gimel. So now we can go back to explain the pasuk that Yaakov tells Yosef, I've given you an extra portion, alachecha beyond your brothers, because the Shvatim, their refinement is through malmim alumim, like it says in Yosef's dream, that they're collecting bundles, and that's Shem Ban, which is collecting sparks of godliness within the worlds of Biyah to transform the bad into good. Although in Biyah it's like a shechem, it's like the shoulder, which is on the external. Whereas Yosef is not working with bad and externals. As they are in Biyah, he's working only within pure holiness, and over there, the externals are also higher. And therefore, Yosef is about making sure that the hashpah, the giving over of energy, is in an internal way, and therefore through that blocks out paroi. And that's the idea of Yosef being given Shechem Echad, one extra portion, which represents transforming the Shechem, the shoulder, which is the external of the neck, into Echad, into oneness. Now, what's the idea of Achirayim, of external within Yosef's level? Yosef is from Atzilus and even beyond in what's called Arich. So how do you have external there? So explanation is that because it is such a high spiritual light, that itself is the cause of externality. What do we mean? Like, let's say when someone's asleep, that then if he has a bug on him, it doesn't disturb him. Or like when a person is bothered by something. So then anything that's disturbing, anything that's opposing to him, he doesn't even notice. If someone's deep in thought, so he doesn't notice that someone else is speaking and saying the opposite of him. So, but then when a person's desire descends into his intellect, even though it's a big symptom, his desire now has to explain itself and rationalize itself, and it's not just his pure desire. But on the other hand, there is still one advantage, that now he notices opposition. Because since it's gone through a symptom, since his desire has gone through a contraction in order to be sort of explained in logical words, so now it's also limited and it can't take anything that's disturbing it. And that's like when he wakes up from his sleep and he notices the bug on him. So this is the idea of the external of arich, that because it's arich represents rotzen, Hashem's desire. And in Hashem's desire, because it's so high, it's not bothered by an opposition. And therefore there can be external. And like we see that when a person wants something, so then is totally involved in that and is totally drawn towards it. But what he doesn't want, so that he's not involved in an internal way, it's just in an external way. And it's like throwing behind his shoulder. That's how he gives something that he's not interested in. So that's Ol Achirayim, the back. But because Rotzen, because desire is beyond seichel, beyond intellect, so therefore it can spread out forever, and therefore the opposition can also receive energy from it until it is contracted and limited into seichel, into intellect. And that's why at the level of Arich, which is Hashem's unlimited light, Hashem's unlimited desire beyond the world, even beyond Atzilus. So Hashem is Marich Af, Hashem has patience, and even for the wicked, because since at this level Hashem's light is unlimited and eternal, so then it can energize everything, just that it will energize what's not the main object of Hashem's desire in an external way, like throwing over the shoulder. Whereas once Rotten comes down into Chachma, once it's defined, so then it only goes to where it's meant to go. And that's how Pari can receive from Achirayim, from the back of Arich. And especially when Arich is not interested in what is below, when it's beyond being nimshach, being given over to lower levels. So then it's like being asleep, where or when a person is very involved in something and he doesn't notice anything opposed to what is involved in. It's like when a person's saying his point and someone else is trying to say, wait a sec, what about this? What about that? And he doesn't even notice. He just continues with his point because he's so involved in it. And therefore, Yosef was sent down to Mitzrayim in order to fix up and block Pari from receiving this hashpah, this giving over of energy. So Yosef is Yesod, which is there within Baal HaRotza and within the master of the desire, and in the desire, then Mitzrayim and Pari can receive. Like we say that in the palace, the spider can be going around in the palace and no one even notices it. That's the idea of Avadim Hayina Lefare that we say in Nagada, that we were slaves to Pare, which is we're slaves to Pare when spiritually, when at a level of light which is totally beyond worlds, and where even opposition can stand without a problem because it's not even noticed. But once this godly light goes through a tzimtzum, and then opposition is noticed. So then that's the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the Exodus, that we become free of Parai. And then the Hashpah is refined not to allow Mitzrayim, not to allow this negative diverting of the godly energy away from Kedusha. And then Vayanatzlu Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim is emptied out because now there's no more Hashpah going being given over to externals where it doesn't belong. Everything goes in an internal way, and that's through Torah mitzvahs, which reveal Hashem's desire. But without Yetzias Mitzrayim, we wouldn't reach to Matan Torah, to the giving of Torah, because at essence, so then Hashem's light can't even be contracted into the specific commands of Torah. And it's like when a person's asleep and he's above any disturbance and any details, and the mind is just within the Yechidah, within his the essence of his soul. So therefore, and then Pari is able to take divert energy. But once we've been liberated from that, and now the Hashem's light is involved in the details, so then Pari can't receive energy, and then we're able to receive the Torah and mitzvahs, which is the internal way and the correct way how Hashem's energy is given to, and attention given to where it is deserving, and where the Hashem's desire is felt upon.